Brendan, first of all, what's your view of what the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, of his new role as this sort of global statesman?
Well, I think it's great, Tom. I mean, if you look at the commitment that we've made to Ukraine, Britain has been very much at the forefront of that, something he feels very passionately about, and of course, as one of the first politicians to visit Ukraine as well. It's really important that we drum up more support internationally for that, and he's a great figure to be able to do that. On top of that, obviously, we've had the Foreign Secretary and Defence Secretary doing some great work as well, and the Prime Minister's reiterated his support, so we've got that talent there, why not use it?
I suppose there is a question in terms of how helpful it is for the Prime Minister, because you do have this sort of competing vision. The Foreign Secretary was in the United States 2 weeks ago saying a similar thing. But of course, Boris Johnson, in the way that he does, is going further. He's saying send jets to Ukraine, which is a position that the Prime Minister of this country has not yet arrived at. Is it your view that we should send jets to Ukraine as well as tanks?
Well, I think we need to support them as much as we can. Obviously, Ukraine isn't a member of NATO as things stand, but we've been leading that effort. We've been helping with training, with equipment and so on. So really we want to see an end to this war. Anything that we can do to help that, I think, is great. Government have been fairly clear on their position with it. And of course, backbench MPs such as myself and others will have their own views on things as well. But for me, certainly the Ukrainian people, the ones I speak to in my constituency, you know, they're desperate to go home to that free nation, and we basically want to get Vladimir Putin and his bullies out.
Now, turning back to domestic politics, of course, Prime Minister's questions yesterday surprised some, with the Prime Minister facing a bit of a sticky wicket. He seemed to perform relatively well against Keir Starmer. Is this a new sort of rejuvenated Prime Minister, now 100 days in office?
I think, in fairness to the Prime Minister, I mean, he's a very capable performer at PMQs, and I think he's been pretty consistent with that as well. I'm not sure Keir Starmer really knows how to handle him. I think with all the difficulties with strikes and so on, I think that's something that's a pretty sticky wicket for Labour at the moment. Of course, the widespread disruption, we've put things like minimum service levels through, so we're very much on the side of working people with that. And I think in terms of Prime Minister's questions, really, Keir Starmer hasn't been able to land a blow. And of course, all people were talking about yesterday, of course, was Kim Johnson's contribution and having to apologise for appalling comments on Israel. So I think it shows that certainly on his own backbenchers there's enough trouble for Keir Starmer behind him.
Yes, that was incredibly interesting, a chilling moment in the House of Commons, really. I was sitting up in the press gallery just sort of above Kim Johnson as that statement was made. The word fascism being used about the Jewish state just 4 days after Holocaust Memorial Day was incredibly shocking, was chilling. Is the Labour Party still in this position that it was under Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, I fear so, Tom. I mean, this is the problem, of course. I mean, for all the PR and all the efforts to try and eradicate anti-Semitism in the party and this almost anti-Israel hatred that is still there. You know, it wasn't just described as fascist, the government. Of course, it was also likened to an apartheid state. Now, that's not really kind of constructive language that we want to see, especially with tensions at the moment. We really want to be de-escalating that. And if you look at the IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism, those kind of criticisms are right there at the forefront of it, and people using that kind of language. So it's right that the member actually apologised, and obviously they've tried to discipline for it. But, you know, when is the next person going to be doing this? And it's every time we have a debate on this issue, Tom.